Well, this is a great time, honestly, to be a buyer, especially if we're looking at new construction. New construction's offering all kind of incentives, not just the price. They're doing some buy downs on the interest rate. We're saying the rates are still high, but a lot of times on a new construction, new home, you can get a very good deal in this market.
If you're looking to buy or sell a home right now, you might think you're out of luck, but that's not the case. Today, we're talking housing affordability and real estate in the greater Tampa Bay area with Dale Nabors, a broker associate and real estate expert with decades worth of experience. How are you doing today, Dale?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Tommy?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for coming on today. So Dale, you've been in the Tampa Bay real estate market for several decades now. How is this market different from what the headlines are telling people? We all see those scare tactics, but it's not quite as scary as you might believe.
That's really true, Tommy. What's going on is, the worst thing is they try to nationalize real estate. Well, real estate is local in nature. So what happens even in South Hillsborough County versus North is a different thing. So when someone asks the question to me, they say, how's the market? Well, I have to kind of get that down a little further and talk about where you're talking. Is it South Tampa, North Tampa? Where is it? Because that's going to tell us a true story.
Wow, we always look at trends in our region because we know that the market in New York in the winter is not so great. But in Florida, it kind of picks up a little bit. Everybody wants to come and enjoy the sunshine. But I never realized that looking at Tampa's real estate market isn't greater Tampa Bay. It's looking, like you said, it might be Wesley Chapel. It could be Brandon. It could be St. Petersburg. And depending on that micro geographic area, it can change?
Oh, absolutely. Now, if we take South Tampa for an example, your house might be, the value for that house versus what you get for your money out in Brandon is two different things. The value of the house in South Tampa might have more value in the land and to build a new home and remove the old home, where that same type of thing, maybe that's not economic right thing to do out in Brandon or Sefner or something like that.
So when you're talking with clients and they give you areas, you kind of suggest, hey, if this is all your requirements you need, maybe you should look at different areas to get better bang for your buck.
Right. I try to get people to still do a little old-fashioned. We come into the office, and we're going to do high-tech, low-tech. We're going to look at the monitor and the screen with all the properties in Tampa Bay, but I still have the old laminated maps. And the reason for that is everyone's used to thinking that everything is close by. So this is to help kind of educate on distance. And distance can be an important factor. I had a gentleman that was at the base, military base, which is in South Hillsborough County or South Tampa, and the home that they liked was in Land O'Lakes. Well, if that's an hour. That's a drive. That's a drive.
Yeah.
And I actually made the husband, the buyer, go and take that as a route the next day before we finished the contract, because a week or two from after that, I wanted him to still like me.
Yeah. Well, that's great that you're really looking out, not just to make the sale. You're trying to make sure they're happy with the home that they're going to be living in, probably for years to come. That's wonderful. So what kind of historical patterns are you seeing repeating themselves right now?
The pattern I'm seeing is that we're forgetting that these interest rates that we have now are the rates that were probably what they were in the 70s and even sometime in the 60s. So everyone got kind of, so used to those very low rates, they were artificially low too long. So it created a mindset that, 5, 6, 6.5 is a high rate, which if you really historically look, that's still not a bad value to get, an interest rate.
Compared to the 80s where that was in the teens frequently and that was considered a normal rate.
Correct. So it's all kind of a mindset. Sometimes what gets in everyone's head is not really the whole story to think about.
Absolutely makes sense. And I've seen that quite a bit where people have said, I don't want to do a construction project right now because the rates are too high. And I always tell them, hey, is this your project? Is this what you want? If this is what you want, go for it now. And you can always refinance later, because we are still seeing home values increase here in Hillsborough County. We're not seeing massive drop-offs like we did. And that's the other thing we hear all the time is, oh, we're headed for another bubble. But this isn't like the 2006, 7, 8, 9 bubble, is it?
No, it's a different thing. I think they've controlled some of the way loans are done. We did have some loans back in that time where, you could honestly breathe in the mirror and they give you a loan. So that kind of thing has gone away. So I think that helps both the buyer not get into something maybe they shouldn't, and also, help the whole transaction to make sure it's a real legit transaction and it's going to work.
Are there any areas where affordability still exists here in the Tampa Bay, or areas that people really should be looking at if they're trying to start a home, or maybe they have a little less income? Anything you can suggest? Any market area?
Well, I would say in Hillsborough County, because we're a bigger landmass than Pinellas County, some of the southern parts of Hillsborough County, part of Riverview, Gibsonton, Waimama, those outlying areas, the land was still less expensive for builders, so you get a little more house for your money.
Okay, great. And so, yeah, a $400,000 house in Tampa is drastically smaller than a $400,000 house in Riverview or Waimama.
Right. Just in one for an example, mid-year last year, and it was probably $500,000 in Waimama, and you got a 5-bedroom, 3-bath home with, garage space and all that. So if you try to take that same home and put it in South Tampa, that could be a multi-million-dollar home.
Yeah, that's understandable. And that's where you were talking about before, is make sure you understand what you need, and maybe it's worth the extra few minutes to get the more bang for your buck. So is now a bad time or just like a different time to buy and invest in real estate?
I think it's a different time. You need to look at maybe some of the reasons you're doing it maybe a little differently. You're going to keep it longer if it was an investment home. That might be a good strategy because, the old story is, land doesn't go away and property, that site's still going to be there. So would you want to invest in that versus some kind of fluctuating, maybe other items, the stock market and different things where, historically, real estate does after so many years go up in value.
Real estate's a long play. We're not seeing as many of the quick fix and flips with massive profit margins like we were seeing, 10 years ago, but we are still seeing appreciation.
We are still seeing appreciation.
For sellers, what matters most for them to get the top dollar? Because I see this all the time. They take a low offer that's maybe way lower, and somebody does come in and do the fix and flip, and then the investor gets all the profit. But what should sellers try to do to their homes so that they're reaping the best benefits of all the sweat equity they put into it?
Well, probably to talk to someone that can do repairs, construction, and do it correctly. And some of them will even charge you at the end, meaning you can get this done, these upgrades to the home, so it looks good. The one little story that I talked about years ago, is how does your mailbox look? How does your front door look? Does it need to be painted? Those little things. I had a lady near up in Carrollwood on a lake. This was $1 million house, but she didn't want to spend money on redoing the hardware on the doorknobs and like that. And I think if she would have just spruced it up a little bit, we could have got more money. And I explained that to her, but she wasn't interested in doing it. So, first impressions are very important.
Okay. So sometimes it's not just hey, gut your kitchen and replace it for $75,000. Sometimes it's a $200 mailbox or $500 worth of locks that can make all the difference in a perception from a buyer.
Right. Because some people have no imagination. So you have to think that way when you're out there as the realtor for the seller and explain those things. If they can just do these tweaks, it could be an advantage. If there's a piece of bad wood on the eave, that might be a $50 problem. Well, in everyone's mind, that's a $2,000 fix. So, to avoid those things is the main thing. Then you're going to get more money out of the house.
That's awesome. But if the house is more dated, if it's a 1980s kitchen, it might be worth looking at swapping the kitchen before you sell, because there may be plenty of equity there that you're leaving on the table by selling something that's so outdated.
Yeah, that can be. Or you might just resurface the cabinets, put a different countertop, different sink. That could just even spruce it up quite a bit.
Make it look new and clean.
Yes, that's the goal.
That's awesome. What mistakes are first-time buyers making in purchasing homes right now? I mean, we're seeing an entire generation of millennial buyers. The millennials are now in their 40s. The youngest are in their 30s. They're entering the home ownership phase of their life. But it's kind of scary figuring out what to do. Is this renovation okay? Is that home in a flood zone? So what kind of tips, tricks, or advice would you give those first-time home buyers that are nervous about this?
Well, one quick example, a number of years ago, one of the Mediterranean homes that was built in the 30s, this young couple they really liked the way that looked. But I can tell in our conversation and talking to them, neither one of them knew how to hold a hammer. So if they went down that path and tried to buy this home, it's like buying an antique car. Either you have a mechanic in your back pocket or you know how to do it. Same thing on one of these, historic homes. I could tell that they just couldn't grasp, even though they thought it was fun and all that. And after a long conversation, we found a newer home in a different area, but I felt that helped them by what I did, from them have peace of mind, because they would have been overwhelmed with a home like that. So part of it is, making sure we're looking at the right thing. Is a condominium the right thing for some people? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Talking about these fees in some of these complexes is another important thing.
And so we need to remember that HGTV is called reality TV, but it's not very real. There are no 24-hour or 48-hour fix and flips. It's a lot of hard work.
A lot of hard work today.
What's one thing every home buyer should do before buying a home?
Get qualified by an appropriate lender.
Okay.
And the reason you say that is some of the lender letters that we get aren't really worth the paper they're written on, because they didn't do a credit report, didn't look at the whole thing. And you're not really doing a service to the buyer, because they think they have a document in their hand that's got value. But if it's not written properly and it shows they really can buy, it's going to get a buyer and seller tangled in a transaction that's not going to close.
And the seller may not even agree to the transaction if they don't feel like the buyer has credible financing or cash on hand.
Right. If you, I look at that letter kind of intensely, in the sense that, did they do a credit report? Or if it just says subject to checking everything, well, that's not really worth the paper it was written on.
Got it. With your decades of experience here in the Tampa Bay area in real estate, I'm sure you got a lot of good stories, but can you pick one favorite story that was just a big success? You really maybe even pulled something out of the garbage and got buyers or sellers where they wanted to be, and it was a very big win for you?
One sticks in my mind, and it was out in kind of that Riverview area, where what happened is I had the listing, okay, and we had a person in the military that it was going to be kind of appropriate for them. But what happened is the loan wasn't, they hadn't been on the job because they came out of they were a civilian at the base. So when they did the underwriting, they needed more time to get the loan. So we put them on what we call a lease option, which a lot of people may or may not know how that works, but there's some option money that was put up. So when now we're down the road and we're ready to close, they have a seasoned job, et cetera. And at the 13th hour, I was told that they needed like another $800 of what we call seasoned money that had been in the bank for 60 days. Well, they didn't have that. So it almost delayed or didn't happen. So from that, I went back because I knew I wanted to make this happen for everybody. So I started thinking, well, they were in there on a lease option, so there was some kind of a lease. So if we did a cancellation fee on the lease of $800, then that could be shown as seasoned money to get the loan through.
That is such a creative solution to a problem. And the whole deal could have fell apart if you hadn't have thought about that. So you really stepped up to help your buyers and sellers make that connection, make that sale happen. That's fantastic. Dale, usually I only have one guest on the podcast, but it looks like you brought a little something. And I got to say, I love his hard hat. But tell me real quick, what's the story behind this guy?
Well, he's got a big story because my dad made that for me about 35 years ago.
Wow.
Okay. So it was, when I first saw the guy, I was kind of impressed. He's supposed to be kind of an offshoot of me.
Okay. I see the resemblance.
A little bit, you know. But what really transpired when my dad passed away, I put him in storage.
Okay.
Because he had dark hair still. You know, he didn't have a good updated Century 21 jacket on. He was just kind of dated. And I convinced a friend of mine that's an artist, didn't take too much convincing, but since I paid him, but to update him. So he gave him the gray hair, updated his jacket. We got him all spiffed up. And sometimes he goes to open houses and different things because, you know, he's kind of a good icebreaker. Yeah. Because maybe you can tell that story and people like to hear a story to kind of see that you're real, you're human. So adding that story and then sometimes making him have a little fun with the hard hat. In this case, he doesn't know if he's ready to go to Hawaii or to a job site. So just to make him fun.
35 years later, you bring a little piece of your dad with you when you go places, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a big part of it too.
That's wonderful. Dale, thank you so much for being here today. If people want to get real, honest guidance on real estate, how can they reach out to you?
Well, they can do it direct, 813-679-1117. Call or text anytime, and I'm ready to help. And my slogan is, it's a wonderful day in Dale's neighborhood.
That's awesome. If you want quality real estate advice from somebody that had decades of experience here in the Tampa Bay area, make sure to connect with Dale Nabors. We'll drop all his information in the comments below.